I'm walking. Took about 30 minutes.
Hey folks, this is Kirsten. Can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yep, we can hear.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Interrupt, yes, please. Yeah, yeah. Hi, Rich.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Hi there. Okay. Anyway, we all did. The bar's got some. It's, yeah, it's cute, yeah. There's Nancy. She has to come in by Zoom.
She wasn't feeling really well.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I want to be able to cough and blow my nose in peace.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the February 2nd, 2026 study session. We will begin with, I think, a staff presentation on the 2026 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update. This is page 6 in the packet if you're looking.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Stacy Henderson, Planning Manager. Just get this set up. All right, can you all see that online? I think I shared it properly. Okay. Thank you for having us tonight. I am here to give a progress update on the many facets as possible on the periodic update. I'm doing a high-level update to allow for plenty of time for questions. Many of the team members are here in attendance to answer questions as well. So a couple of staff are here who have been working on it. And then online, we have some of our consultants. So we're excited to share all the work we've been doing. I'm the main presenter, but feel free to ask questions after each slide or at the end of the presentation as things come up, because there's a lot to go over and we want to make sure we cover what you want to cover. So we will begin with a brief overview of the project team and the schedule, just to kind of remind you who we are and what we're working on. So city staff has really come together and worked hard on this project. I'm really excited to get to share it. I'm grateful for everyone who spent all their hours on various aspects of this project. The planning team and Lily Fry, our housing program manager, we've been working on the land capacity analysis, which I will go over later in this presentation. The public works team has been working closely with Farron Pierce on transportation planning. And Kelly Vandenberg has been working hard to update the economics chapter. These are some fun pictures from the open house we had in September. So just to kind of get an overview of those were some of the main team members, but there's a ton of staff who have helped with various outreach aspects, and it's been a good group effort. In addition to this, we're working with the lead consultant team, SCJ Alliance. So Kirsten is here attending online from SCJ. They've been doing the overall project organization, outreach, orchestrating interviews, policy and planning expertise. Their sub-consultants include Leland Consulting, who's helping us with economics and land use planning. Andrew is here tonight online as well from Leland Consulting to help answer questions on land capacity or economics. Cascadia Consulting has been leading the way on our environmental planning and climate element requirements. Nicole is here tonight from Cascadia to answer questions on that. And then Farron Pierce, who helped with our last periodic update, have been working with Public Works on transportation planning. And Derek is here to help answer any questions on that. So just a really quick high-level project schedule. I think you all saw this last time I presented, but it's been a while. We started with a kickoff meeting last June in 2025, and we've been doing a lot. So as you can see, engagement kind of goes throughout in various facets, which I'll go over in a bit. And then we have it broken down by climate element, transportation, all these different things. But what I wanted to emphasize is a lot of the chapter drafts are due in June, and we are still on track to finish those drafts in June as planned. And then the plan is to go through the adoption process for the rest of the year until December, end of December. So a more detailed schedule is underway now that we've done a lot of the information gathering. We're kind of focusing in on how to finish some of this up. In your packets, I also included this timeline. One thing we're looking at right now is, each chapter and section is most likely going to be a replacement document because we've done a lot of work on each different section and chapter, and they're all being thoroughly updated. So staff and the consultants are working on that, and we're tracking which public commissions need to review what documents before final drafts. This is not a final schedule, but it's what we're working on at the moment, so we can make sure to hit all the different commissions we need to and get as much public input as possible. There's also a lot of appendices, so we've been working on the racially disparate impacts memo with various groups and a task force and, different things like that. So let's see here. Okay, so just to kind of go over some of the fun outreach we've been doing. It's really important to this process, and we've been able to hear from the community on various priorities, challenges, questions, and suggestions. So the start of this project, we did really broad outreach, just to kind of educate people on what a comprehensive plan is, why are we updating it, what's involved with the update. We went to several Saturday markets and Bite of the Berg to tell people about the open house and encourage people to attend that so they could get more in-depth information and participate in more feedback opportunities. At each tabling event, we did what's called a penny poll. And that was really interesting. We had 6 different categories of just various facets of city planning, and people were given 6 pennies, and there were 6 jars, and they got to put the pennies in the jars that were their highest priority. They could put them all in one jar, or they could spread them out however they wanted. So included in here is a pie chart that kind of shows the results. Parks and Rec was a little higher than the rest, but they were all fairly even because it's all really important. So, we all kind of knew that, but it was really fun, and it was a very tactile way for people to kind of understand that the comprehensive plan is about all these different facets of city planning. We also did the open house. I think a lot of you stopped by on that. We invited all of the commissions and local organizations and did a lot of public outreach for that, and we had a pretty good turnout. There were interactive maps and activities. People could vote on different things and what affects them, and a lot of staff was there so we could talk to them and have conversations. And all of that information that we learned at that event was analyzed and has been used moving forward to work on drafts and things like that. So after the open house, outreach has largely become a more focused effort. So we're preparing an online tool to kind of become more public again, but for now we have been doing group interviews with local stakeholders, creating an online tool that I'll be talking about a little bit later. We've been doing check-ins with commissions, and final outreach will have to do with drafts and things. So Do you guys have any questions so far? I kind of blew through the first couple. Okay. So at the open house in September, we asked the community many questions about Ellensburg, including taking current stock of where our community is at and where we want to see things in 20 years. We had staff at these boards to participate in conversation and educate on why we were planning for 20 years. The community was asked to describe Ellensburg in 3 words, and on a separate board, describe what you envision for 2046. Staff reviewed and analyzed each response, and as a fun visual, Kelly created these word clouds. I think these are a great visual tool as someone who's visual to kind of get a glimpse as to like the bigger words or the things that popped up more and the smaller words popped up a little less in conversation or in feedback. But we actually have been using these a lot just to kind of, as we rewrite drafts and look at new themes on items, just another way to gauge what's important to the community. So it's been really interesting. Yeah. So group interviews. I'm sure you all remember we presented a public participation plan months ago. It's pretty extensive and there's a lot of groups in Ellensburg. And we want to try to reach out to as many as humanly possible. So one way we were kind of focusing and trying to get more in-depth feedback is group interviews, which has been great. This helps us with focused outreach to local nonprofits, businesses, organizations, and community groups to further learn what the community needs. Cascadia Consulting Group has conducted their own group interviews kind of separate because there is that new climate hazard assessment chapter requirement. So we're adding a new chapter that's kind of a bigger chunk of some of the work. They worked with city staff or interviewed city staff, local nonprofits, and knowledgeable community members. They asked really great interview questions about how different, they explained what different hazards they're looking at. Like we're looking at fire and flood and wildfire smoke and extreme heat and things like that. And how do those things affect these community members and how can we plan for them? And included in your packet was the climate hazard assessment document, Exhibit 3. They also got to review that and provide feedback to make sure it accurately reflects local climate hazards. SCJ has also conducted several larger group interviews. They have a few more to do, but they've done quite a few of them, and these were a little more focused. So one was on housing with Habitat and Hope Source and various local groups. One was on members from Central and the city facilities management met with consultants to discuss city infrastructure and to ensure we had a good understanding of needs and future goals. So these have been really helpful, and I did include, we provided very high level kind of feedback and just kind of the first pass of what we learned in these interviews in the staff report. So we learned a lot more than what was there, but that was just kind of a high level feedback so you could get a taste for what we've been learning. So, does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
On the intent, I see still is to interview the tribes.
Yes.
Besides the Yakima Nation, what tribes is that going to involve?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but there were a few we were looking at to make sure we include anyone who's applicable and in the region that we
Okay.
need to. So we've been asking Sadie and we reached out to DAP to
Okay, great. Thank you.
ask for some contacts. Yeah.
Just a reminder that the Yakima Nation is made up of, I think it's 12 different tribes.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So a more concrete segment of work that we wanted to present to you today, and why I pulled in our consultants, because there's a lot to it, and ask plenty of questions because I still have questions on some of it, but it's been really exciting. So it's the land capacity analysis. And just as a reminder, the point of this is some of this work that we're doing now is to well, hold on. Okay. There's a lot to present. So a part of the periodic update work that we do is to review our current city infrastructure, capacity, and services in conjunction with projected growth and housing needs. And this helps us see if our community is able to accommodate projected growth and development needs into the next 20 years. So that's a big part of this work, is getting projected jobs and growth and housing needs, and can we accommodate that for 20 years? The periodic update and work such as this helps communities determine if we need to expand the urban growth area or if we have sufficient land and zoning capacity as is. Leland Consulting has been leading the way in developing our land capacity analysis for this project. And included in the council packet as Exhibit 2 was the draft land capacity analysis for your review. Lily Fry and the planners have also provided really great insight and recommendations throughout the process, so we've all been really collaborating on this. I will briefly review the land capacity analysis, but Andrew from Leland Consulting and Lily and Mark are here to help answer any questions. So Ellensburg was given, so these numbers right here, this is kind of a basic breakdown. With regards to our future housing needs, these are allocated by Kittitas County. As you can see, a large number of the housing needs that we need to ensure and plan for are the lower and middle income housing areas. And zero need for increased capacity for housing in the 120 plus AMI range. In looking at how to ensure that the city can accommodate this, Leland Consulting followed Commerce and Kittitas County methodology for this land capacity analysis. This LCA evaluated capacity within the current city limits as the county LCA evaluates the land within the UGA. So what we're talking about in this part is within the city limits. They evaluated development since 2020, as well as current proposed projects, followed by Kittitas County. And we followed Kittitas County regarding methodology regarding exclusions and restrictions such as critical areas, public or undevelopable land, and market and infrastructure factors. As you can see in the draft LCA, they classified vacant, partially used, and underutilized parcels, and we evaluated residential, commercial, split housing, and employment density assumptions. I will let Andrew explain some of the ins and outs of this if you have any questions regarding methodology, but I am going to present some of our zoning changes, proposals, and the results of this. So you may just have questions later as well. Does anyone have any questions on the methodology, or do you want me to dive in?
So can I just say
Dive away.
things here? And this is really the core work of the comprehensive plan. This is kind of where it starts. To make sure we are planning by the Growth Management Act, the city is required to plan for 20 years. And so this is the formal planning process to project what does our population look like in 20 years? And then how do we make sure, and this is a new requirement from the state this year, that we have to plan for different types of housing based on income brackets. And so that's all based on AMI. And so this is a new level of planning, trying to get down to how can we set up our rules to make sure we have the right rules in place for zoning properly and development that could accommodate what we project would be our growth in the next 20 years and also for jobs.
Yes, thank you. And something this is a very big chunk, and it also informs a lot of other aspects of the comp plan update. So as we talked about possible zoning changes, which I'll go over in a minute, we updated Fair and Pierce because they need to plan for transportation planning for that and modeling. We also coordinated efforts with the Parks and Rec consultants from MIG because they're working on their pros plan, but we still kept them informed of what our planning was so they could adequately plan for future possible needs for more open spaces. So this was definitely a building block for a lot of different work. So we first evaluated what our housing capacity is if all zoning stayed as it was. So what is our current housing capacity is what this kind of reflects and looks at. As you can see from this chart here, without proposed rezones, Ellensburg was fairly close to achieving the bare minimum kind of allocation we were received, but the housing numbers are the same numbers. Oh wait, no, never mind. My understanding, Andrew, do you want to talk about this chart a little bit?
Yeah,
My-
sure.
And the pending units do contribute towards our capacity as
Yeah.
well.
Hello, everyone. Andrew Albee here with Leland Consulting. Yeah, so this chart shows a bunch of things, but basically you've got your AMI on the left. So we had on the previous slide the housing targets at various income levels. Now they're vertical instead of horizontal, going from lower income up to higher income units. And then there's this step where various income levels are added together. And the reason for this is because units that can serve households earning under 80% AMI are basically considered to be primarily in multifamily housing. So multifamily housing could be a market rate apartment. It could be a subsidized apartment that's serving, 60% AMI or something, or 30% a deeply affordable apartment that's built with a tax credit funding structure. It could be permanent supportive housing. All of those basically require the same type of land use, somewhere where you can build multifamily housing. So that's why they're aggregated in aggregated housing needs. Similar for 80 to 120, although the category is a little more broad, it encompasses things like duplexes, triplexes, ADUs, other forms of middle housing. So that's how you get from the sort of granular targets at all these specific income bands to these aggregated housing needs. And then, yeah, there's this pending column. So this analysis is based on, as Stacy mentioned, the Department of Commerce's methodology and targets, which come down through the county, and those targets have a 2020 baseline. So everything that's happened since 2020 has to count towards these targets. And also there's, subdivisions and construction that are currently underway. So known projects that are going to develop a certain number of units of various types, those count towards the targets as well. Because we don't count that land as, vacant, because we know that there's something that's going to happen on it. And if we have a unit count, then that goes in here. So that's what the pending unit column is. Then you subtract those from the needs aggregated total, and you get your remaining needs, which you have to meet through vacant underutilized land. And the total capacity here shows the land capacity on the vacant and underutilized land by housing type or income level. So yeah, before the rezone, we found a small deficit in zoned land that could accommodate multifamily housing at the levels needed to meet the target.
Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, as far as this data, just to kind of confirm, as far as those target needs, that is based upon this 20-year comprehensive, correct?
Yeah, correct. The housing needs are based on the 20-year plan. So they're developed at the state level. The OFM, the Office of Financial Management, produces population projections for every county. And then the Department of Commerce developed, in response to HB 1220 in 2021, developed a tool that analyzes existing and projected future household incomes at the countywide level. And then you get the housing needs for the whole county at all these different income levels. And then the county goes through a process of allocating those needs down to the cities. And there's various considerations there. What percentage of countywide growth do you expect there to be in Ellensburg? What are current incomes and housing prices in Ellensburg? There's a lot of back end in that tool, which is administered by the Department of Commerce. So those kind of flow down from that process.
And then, so what I can interpolate from this is that essentially anything that's market rate above 80% AMI, we look like we would be on track for providing the opportunity for those land use to kind of get the inventory that we need. This is also showing that in that affordable housing below 80% AMI, we have some work to do. We've got some identified opportunities to take advantage of the land use that's being proposed in this, but there's still opportunities in it, and this doesn't take an effect, and this is just an assumption and kind of from our Planning Commission and Affordable Housing Commission, this is based upon what's out there as far as those parcels. So there's got to be a lot of factors associated with availability of that land use. Then obviously you get into developers that are interested in that plot and developing over the 20 years. So there's a lot of variables that are still in there. This just identifies the opportunity.
Right. This is the base. This is the starting point. There's other analyses taking place as part of the comprehensive plan that Stacy and Lily can speak to that they're working on, like the adequate provisions checklist and other things that look at the city's capacity to, procure funding for affordable housing, for example. And there's a lot of other elements to getting it built. But this is the building block. So do we have enough space? Is the zoning correct to allow that housing? I mean, and there are some assumptions built into here that not every single available parcel will necessarily change use over 20 years. So, there's some of that sort of realism built in. But yes, it is the baseline. Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. So after evaluating our current conditions and initial results, it's clear that the UGA doesn't necessarily need to be expanded, but rather there's opportunity and capacity to increase accommodations through some zoning changes. Staff evaluated possible changes to propose to ensure we truly have this capacity, because like you said, there's a lot of variables, so we want to make sure we truly can accommodate as much as possible. And therefore, hopefully more middle and lower income housing will result. The 7 proposed zoning changes in your staff report reflect small zoning change proposals that can help increase housing capacity and developers' ability to develop a variety of housing types in different zones. The 7th proposal is not visually depicted here, but that's because it includes combining RL and RS zoning and isn't really a visual change. It's just a discussion point to discuss. So staff has proposed these changes that were listed in your packet and are up here to the Affordable Housing Commission and Planning Commission at a joint meeting on January 8th. Staff took a kind of a gut check at that meeting and with a few small suggestions, fairly consistent feedback, almost unanimous, I think, was to continue with proposing all 7 changes. So this mapping and all the charts reflects those commission's changes for the most part, as much as we could incorporate. But I did want to present them today to you all to kind of hear your preliminary thoughts and questions. And we do have some particular questions with regards to item 6, proposing the change to RCMU up in the north there. So change number 1 up here in the purple. Staff is proposing to change, currently it's zoned residential suburban. So staff is proposing to change it to neighborhood center mixed use to allow for commercial and more dense residential options close to downtown and to the south interchange. Option number 2, those red parcels right there. And we did find a typo in there, so I apologize for that. Along West University Way, around water, we would like to change those, or we propose to change those from commercial highway to central commercial 2 to retain businesses and uses and grow multifamily close to downtown, not slow it. But the thought was, with the recent projects out there and the new sidewalks and things, that might actually be a great opportunity to encourage some multifamily housing. But instead of changing commercial highway, which is supposed to be largely automobile focused, we propose changing it to central commercial, which is similar to some of the adjacent parcels zoning already. Item 3, University Way between Reeser Creek and Cora. We propose to change those from commercial highway to regional center mixed use to allow for multifamily housing along this corridor. Again, because of recent improvements and adjacent to other mixed use areas of the West Interchange. Item 4, between Reeser Creek and the West Interchange from commercial highway to regional center mixed use, adjacent to other mixed use areas of the West Interchange. So a little bit north of here, there is more regional center mixed use. So it's kind of expanding on that kind of growing mixed use zoning out there instead of just residential, which it is right now. Item 5, we're proposing parcels near East Helena and North Water with proximity to schools in downtown and along minor arterial streets to be rezoned from residential suburban and residential low to neighborhood center mixed use to allow more dense housing and potentially commercial uses. And then item 6, up on Airport, parcels along North Airport Road adjacent to other new multifamily development from residential suburban to neighborhood center mixed use to allow more dense housing and potentially commercial uses. And then, as I mentioned, we are proposing to combine residential suburban and residential low into a new residential low with a density minimum of 3 dwelling units per acre due to the airport overlay requirements and a maximum of 12 dwelling units per acre to allow for duplexes, townhomes, and/or cottage housing in this low density zone. And that one doesn't really impact the land capacity analysis per se, but it is a proposed change that we would like to make in effort to increase housing density opportunities. So, does anyone have any questions on these or any feedback?
Stacey, can I just say really quick? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Did I interrupt someone?
Jump in.
Oh, I was just going to say quickly that the final change to combining the 2 residential zones only increases or changes the LCA at the middle housing and upper income level. So it doesn't really affect the deficit, but it does increase capacity for middle housing. Although there was sufficient capacity before, it provides somewhat of a buffer for additional sort of middle housing types that can serve a broader range of household types and incomes.
And I would just also confirm that these changes and when they run the numbers again, based on the different zones, we meet our targets in all of those areas.
Just a comment is that when they were talking about this during our joint Affordable and Planning Commission meeting, we had pretty heavy support for this as far as some of the proposals associated with it. Again, this helps provide opportunities and remove some barriers for hopefully working with developers in a lot of these aspects. We're hoping that this will provide some economic development, but more importantly, addressing some of the housing needs that is projected in our community. So.
I have a question if now's a good time. Well, first a comment. I support the 5 and 6. I've in my mind, we don't have enough services up in the north to serve those north end residential um, areas up there, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, 5 and 6 would allow for more of those groceries, or I don't even know, gas stations, maybe dentists, whatever, up there. I had a question on one. Are there, what would guarantee that that there's a mix of commercial and residential in the old canals property to the south, in item 1? I'm picturing if we zone it NCMU, and potentially that's just becomes a big box mega development. Is that possible, or is there limits on the NCMU that would buffer that outcome?
I mean, we can't guarantee that it would be a mixed. I do know that NCMU has, the RCMU allows a lot more commercial uses than the NCMU. So it's a little more encouraging towards residential, I believe.
I would just also add, I know I looked up the tables this afternoon, and the large big box, there's a limit to the sizes in the NCMU, and I believe it's a conditional use permit only for the 60 to 100,000 square
Yes,
foot.
thank you. That is one of the reasons we, yes, thank you for reminding me. Yes. That is one of the reasons we also favored that one here, because we would love to see residential there, since it's so well connected to so many resources.
Okay, thanks. So the size limit of stores would be 100,000 square foot.
Yes.
So in number 3, when we're talking about the regional center mixed use, it would along like University Way, would we be encouraging retail on the first floors, and then residential above? Is that anticipated in that zone?
I mean, it could be, not necessarily though. I think the idea there was to allow for multifamily housing of that zone and the higher density housing. There are a few opportunities. Oh, those are kind of with 2, but I know with 2, there's that hotel that's already there that, as various groups have wanted to turn it into housing over the years.
Right. And then I have a clarification. We actually just brought the code up. The NCMU is actually maximum of 60,000.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just for frame of reference, Fred Meyer is 128,
Okay,
so a half of Fred Meyer.
thank you.
Yeah, I believe Safeway's about 50 or 60 though, so that would be our typical grocery store size.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, within the zone, there's no established limit. There's no ratio over that, say, the entire purple area, which is dozens, if not hundreds of parcels maybe. Right, and the zoning decisions will be made on each individual parcel. So you could have a commercial next to a commercial, next to a commercial on the same street, and nothing would, in the code, would typically prohibit that. No ratio of residential and commercial.
Not that I'm aware of, no. We do have kind of anticipated, in our calculations, we included anticipated percentages of what we think residential, how much residential would be included in these RCMU areas, but our code doesn't include any required ratios.
I know in some of it probably applies to 2, but it might also apply to 1 or the others, and the the model for the mixed use with the residential and the commercial component. A lot of the more common designs are commercial on the ground floor, residential above. But I've heard of conversations recently where there's a real debate whether that's really the only way that could go, and whether prohibiting residential on the ground floor is a good idea or good practice. So I think we're still open to that.
Right. Mark can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think in our code, it depends largely on the street classification of whether it can be, and it's less about the zone. So as far as required residential and then,
The associated streetscape.
yeah, if it's like a
cross-section.
storefront street, it has to, yeah.
Yeah. Which I think maybe that's some of the debate, whether that is too rigid.
Yeah,
So that's a different,
absolutely.
different conversation.
Stacey,
So,
can I just say, the canals is currently only one parcel. So it hasn't been subdivided, would need to be subdivided in the future before
But
such decisions are made.
This would lead the way to subdivision, or
Yes,
partition.
it could be, yes.
Could-
So as Heidi was mentioning, we do have a breakdown of the additional capacity these proposed changes would help allow. So you can review that. It's in your packet. I did make a few updates to the slideshow this weekend and today. So if you want an updated version of this instead of what's in your packet, I can certainly send that out. We did, so here up above is the first chart that I showed you. That's the kind of baseline without any zoning changes. And then, sorry, they're so small. Here we go. And below here, we wanted to show that what impact the proposed changes would make on the results. So as you can see, it does certainly put us over our capacity in a comfortable amount as far as what we're required to plan for and what we should and need to be planning for. So been a very interesting analysis.
A question.
Yeah.
Everything focusing on demand, the capacity analysis is driven by units, not acres, right? I mean, we're talking about units.
Andrew's
Capacity
shaking
units.
yes.
This is all units, but the units are based on acres. But yes, it's
So, for
we're
example.
seeing here as units, yeah.
Sorry, the large parcel at the south that we've just talked about, one large parcel,
Mhm.
lots of potential units.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was just trying to get my head around on the map with the 6 or 7 areas colored, there are different shades of different potential uses. What percentage of our total developable land in the community that represents, if that makes sense. And I don't expect an answer. I'm just trying to understand how much of our change or proposed zoning changes will impact probably the answer is probably in the table, but I'm trying to get a simple thought through my head where it's like, okay, we're trying to tackle a deficit. So these are
Right.
the changes, but.
Well, that's
a lot
an
of the-
interesting question. I think that there's another layer to it, which is if you in the methodology is the total the citywide map of vacant, partially used and redevelopable parcels. And when we look at these change areas, we're actually only looking at the parcel, for the capacity analysis, we're actually only looking at the parcels in these change areas that are vacant, partially used or redevelopable. So it's not actually every parcel in the shaded areas on the map, but the proposal is to rezone all those parcels. And there may be a parcel in there that we didn't classify as vacant or rather as redevelopable because, okay, we were using assessor's data and the building value is, some percentage different than reality and the property owner does want to do something with it over time. So we didn't want to just spot rezone vacant parcels, which is bad planning anyway, and discouraged by the GMA, but also, so you kind of have to in your mind superimpose those two maps on top of each other to see. But yeah, we could easily find the percentage of vacant and redevelopable parcels or acreage that this represents, if you want that.
Yeah, I'm not super concerned about the percentages. I think the thought that comes to a lot of people's mind is we look at the demand calculation on the LCA, it's saying
Mhm.
0 is going to be for the 120 AMI. Well, we know the contractors in town like to build houses, large
Right.
subdivision, or that segment of the market. So any land that's currently undeveloped that isn't shaded, the zoning wouldn't change. So if it's currently zoned for low density residential, that would continue. So that market pressure won't necessarily impact the entire community as much as it would impact these parcels. Am I close?
Right.
And its market is going to dictate what's built, not this table, not our policy. Our zoning will.
That's where some of those variables come into
Right,
play,
so-
but some staff knowledge also came into play with suggesting these changes as far as understanding parcel 1 and the history and needs there, the triangle shaped parcel and some of the housing needs along University. And we've had a few recent rezones up on Airport to high density, high residential density. And then at the planning commission meeting is actually when a commissioner suggested it could be mixed use, which
Sure.
we loved, so.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue with the methodology. I think the takeaway is the map with the colored shaded areas. This is not 100% of the total housing development
No,
in Ellensburg in
no.
the next 20 years. This is going to be a small portion of it.
Right. Yeah. So just to briefly, did anyone have any more land capacity questions? I know we're getting close. Are we out of time? 5 minutes? Okay. Uh-oh. Well, I'm on my last slide. I can go over it really quickly to give you an update on everything else we've been doing. For transportation, Fair and Pierce has sent city staff a draft existing conditions memo, and we're well underway on future modeling. So they actually took all these suggestions into account with their future modeling. There are 2 environmental related aspects to this project. As a reminder, we're working on a citywide environmental impact statement. And we actually, another layer to that infill question you had was we are working on focusing and scoping out a possible exemption for infill housings for SEPA. So that's one benefit of being able to do the EIS. We're also creating a climate element task force with a member of the DEI Commission, 2 members of the Environmental Commission, and a few community members to do that policy building. And drafting. And then, as I mentioned before, Parks and Rec, they're almost done with their pros plan, and this comprehensive plan adopts their pros plan by reference and then lists those goals that they've already developed in the comprehensive plan. But as I mentioned, we have been working closely with them the whole way. And then Kelly has been working really hard on updating the economics chapter as well. So kind of working on a million different little things at once.
Just a comment regarding the climate element here is that as we go through this update, it'll be important that we maintain maximum flexibility, especially with, quite frankly, the conflict between the state and federal government associated with this. So as a city, we have to look at this with maximum flexibility and ensure that we're looking at what we may be mandated to do both at the federal and the state level, and then ensuring that we're looking at things that are going to be reliable and redundant for ourselves, including our own generation of energy if necessary. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Something that's really exciting that we're rolling out in February that I mentioned earlier is an online tool. And part of that's going to be a story map that walks through all the different climate hazards that we're focusing on and learning about, and people will be able to provide feedback on that. And we will also be uploading documents to that site, and people can review and leave comments on those as well. So I blew through that last one so we can finish on time, but does anyone have any more questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned until 1900 hours when we'll start our regular city council meeting.